Now before we can put our binding on, we do need to sew our strips together. And we need 2.5 inch wide by the width of the fabric, and depending on the size of your quilt, a certain number of strips. And then we sew them together. Now, our first inclination is just to line them up like this, and then we have a nice straight seam and we sew. But think about this for just a minute. I have a seam right here. You can see that seam, right? And when I make my binding, I am going to fold this over to sew it onto my machine. Now look at how thick that's getting. Then I need to roll this over one more time, and before you know it, this is as thick as a pair of jeans, and that's not what I want on the side of my quilt. So what I do instead is use a diagonal seam on the bias. Now, got to make sure right sides together. I know we should know that, but how easy is it sometimes just to lay them down the wrong way? Now, when I line them up to do a diagonal seam, I have my first piece come from side to side, and my second piece go from front to back. And I'm going to overhang my fabric on each end just the littlest bit. Now, the reason I'm doing this, let me see if I've got something white I can put underneath here. There we go. The reason I let this little bit protrude out is when I come sewing to this corner, I want to hit that corner spot on. And if I can see where the edge of this is, I know to come right into that point there. So you can draw a line from corner to corner. You can press your corner in. You can do something like this where you press the corner down and you have a seam. Whoops, dropped one. And you can see now that you have a folded line that you can follow. So this is how I want to do it. I'm going to put two pieces on top of each other, right sides together, and I overhang both sides. And that gives me a little fudge factor in case it isn't exactly straight. Whoops, here, let me align my needle here. There we are. And then I'm just going to come straight to this point. And you're only going across, a couple inches. So it's pretty easy to hit that point as you go. So here, I'll align this and this one. Now see, that doesn't go all the way up. You see that? So when I cut my selvage off, you can see I just used my scissors and did a quick job. So if you want to be more accurate, obviously use your rotary cutter and ruler. But I'm sitting at my machine, and it just was kind of the easy thing to do. And that sometimes can make an extra step for you. So I just want you to see what we're doing. Here we are. Now, go back up here to my corner. And you see how I lift my presser foot up and I tuck that corner right in up to the needle. And once the needle's in the fabric, I align myself so I'm going straight, and then I sew. That way I make sure that everything is right where it needs to be. And I am good to go. All right. So, and you can also see that I'm chain stitching. So again, see how the needle goes right in between those two corners? Right there. And that way I know I'm sewing right on the diagonal. Now what I do want to show you is when I get to this point, I will come in and I want to cut basically a 1/4 inch seam. You can do it with scissors, you can do it with your rotary cutter, whatever works well for you. But I save these, and I'm going to make little mini half square triangles. And when I have a lot of them together, then I'll just go through and sew them up. I'll get them trimmed, and then I'm going to make something really scrappy and wonderful. So don't let these go to waste. There's a lot you can do with this. Okay, so with our binding sewn and our pieces cut, we are going to press this in one long strip, just kind of get those seams nice and flat, and then we're going to attach it to our quilt. And